Hey guys, it's Chris here. Thought I'd do another video for you guys. I had a little time tonight and had some topics on the forum recently and asked some questions and what topics you guys wanted to cover. And the one that kept coming up was broadhead tuning because this hunting season's right around the corner. We have about 2 more months somewhere in that area for here in Georgia. And so I'm hoping you guys are out shooting your broadheads. But I get asked that question a lot. And I don't always talk about broadhead tuning. I talk about bareshaft tuning more often than that. But really, I'm going to do the video talk about both bareshaft tuning and broadhead tuning because I tune really the same for both. Because anytime you make an adjustment to the bow, the impacts and all the adjustments you make to any time you tune is really the same. And I'm going to demonstrate that with an arrow and what I look for in paper and what effect that has on a broadhead when you put it on the front as opposed to a bare shaft with no fletching and that type of thing, because really a broadhead tipped arrow and a bare shaft fly in the exact same direction. So I'm going to explain that and why I like the bare shaft and how that affects broadheads. So to get started, let's look at a broadhead and think about the aerodynamics on a broadhead and why they do what they do, because I know a lot of you guys just shoot broadheads and that's fine. So let's say you pull out your bow and you go out and you shoot a shot or shoot a couple of shots with a broadhead and they are flying to the left, or to the right, sorry, they're flying to the right. Your field points are here, your broadheads are flying to the right. So what does that mean and how does that happen? Well, basically what happens is when your arrow leaves your bow, when it comes off of the riser, then that means the tail of that shaft is left. Okay, that's shot through paper would probably have a left tear in paper. So what happens is when that arrow comes out, if this is straight, if it's just slightly out of tune and it turns this way, it's a left tear through paper, the wind is catching that broadhead this way and it's planing to the right. So if it comes this way, it turns and it continues on that path to the right. So to fix that, you basically, through paper or however you want to tune it, you want to basically correct the knocked left tear. And you can do that a number of ways depending on which bow you're shooting, whether it's just a rest move, and I would move that rest in to the right, and then, or you're shimming the cam, that way you would shim the cam to the left. And if you're yoke tuning, you would add more cam lean and you would twist the yoke left yoke, and untwist the right yoke. So whatever type bow you're shooting, you're trying to correct that. So if it was the other way, if your arrows are flying to the broadheads are flying to the left, you have a right tear through paper, and the wind is catching this broadhead from the front and it's pushing it to the left instead of straight. So that's why a broadhead planes, is because it basically has some steering from the front, and the fletching, although it does a tremendous amount of work, when this thing is traveling at 300 feet per second and there's a lot of surface area on a broadhead, the wind has a huge impact on which way it's going to steer it. So to think about the same thing with a bare shaft, it's basically the exact opposite of the broadhead as far as aerodynamics. There's absolutely no steering on a bare shaft. So let's talk about the same thing that we just talked about. You shoot through paper, or you're shooting however you're doing it, and your bare shaft tears this way. Okay, so when it comes out, it's point to the right, knock to the left. There's no steering on this arrow, so it has no choice but to keep traveling in that direction to the right, which is really the same as the broadhead, except it's pushing the wind this way. This thing, the bare shaft, just comes out sideways, and since there's no fletching to correct it, it's going to continue traveling that direction, and that's the same thing as a broadhead. And that's why if you bare shaft tune, and you can get it coming out of the bow straight through paper, when you put on a broadhead, there's very little aerodynamic resistance to push it one way or the other. And when you shoot a broadhead, I say 99 times out of 10, unless the broadhead is a poor design or it wobbles or it's not spinning true, it's going to fly to the same point of impact. And that's why I like broadhead tuning, because it's quick. You don't tear up nearly as much or a target like you will with a broadhead if you just shoot over and over and over with a broadhead. And you do need to always shoot your broadheads to make sure that they're flying correctly. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm not saying, don't test them. This is just an easy way with a bare shaft to verify which way your broadheads are going to go. So if you go out and you're testing and you say, oh, my broadheads are flying high, well, you probably have a knock low condition, and the broadhead is planing upwards, and the same as falling down. That's the knock high, and they're planing down. The bare shaft would show you the exact same tear through paper and tell you why your broadheads are planing. So again, that's kind of why I use the bare shaft. And broadhead tuning, basically they use the exact same way to fix the problem. It's just the broadhead is going to be downrange and you're going to see your groups. The bare shaft is going to be up close, and you make the adjustments necessary to fix that. I can make an extremely long video about bare shaft tuning and broadhead tuning, and I may do that at some point, but there would be a lot of variables to cover in that. This is just a quick video to say, why do broadheads plane one way or the other, and what is the correlation to a bare shaft? And I hope you guys understand that and why they mimic each other in their flight. Cool. If you have any questions, hit me up on the forum. Thanks, as always.